Robert Mugabe has just stepped down from power after 37 years because of a military coup that wasn't a military coup. A fired vice president who will now be president of a resource-rich country that's gone broke. So what just happened in Zimbabwe? Mugabe rose to power as a revolutionary icon fighting British colonial rule. Following Zimbabwe's independence in 1980, Mugabe and his party, the Zimbabwe African National Union-Patriotic Front, were overwhelmingly voted in. They passed bold economic and land reforms, were hailed as an agricultural success story, and pushed the country's literacy rates to nearly 90%, the highest in Africa. But by the 90s, Mugabe's policies were failing and corruption was spreading. He began consolidating his grip on power, cracking down on dissidents, confiscating white-owned farms, and promising to remain in power until he was 100. By 2008, Zimbabwe's economy was in freefall. Unemployment was over 80%, inflation over 500 billion%, and facing international sanctions fueled by the treatment of white farmers. Enter China, a country that long supported Zimbabwe's anti-British struggle. Between 2002 and 2012, it funded 128 different projects across the country and became Zimbabwe's largest trading partner by 2015. But in 2016, Zimbabwe started pushing back, passing an indigenization law which forced large foreign companies to transfer or sell 51% of their stakes to Zimbabweans. The law promised to restore the country's economic sovereignty but undermined China's interests. Meanwhile, the question of who would take over after 93-year-old Mugabe was looming. Two candidates were the most likely. The first was Grace Mugabe, his wife and leader of the Young Generation 40 faction of ZANU PF, but unpopular among Zimbabweans for her lavish lifestyle, earning her the nickname Gucci Grace. The other was Vice President and former intelligence chief Emmerson Mnangagwa. He was the army favorite, known for his ruthlessness during the country's guerrilla war, which gave him the nickname the Crocodile. Both figures fought publicly for power, and when Mugabe suddenly fired Mnangagwa last week, it was seen as a move to make way for Grace to take over. On November 9th, Zimbabwe's army chief, General Constantino Guveya Chiwenga, visited China and said the country was willing to deepen cooperation in all fields to promote the rapid development of bilateral state and military relations. 5 days later, tanks were on the streets in Harare, surrounding Mugabe's home. A statement read on state television declared the army was going after criminals, but that it wasn't a takeover. But a power change was in fact in play. Grace Mugabe was expelled from ZANU PF, Robert Mugabe was told to resign or face impeachment, and Emmerson Mnangagwa is getting ready to take over as interim president. Thousands of Zimbabweans are now celebrating the end of Mugabe's reign. But will a change in president lead to the transparency and prosperity its people desperately need? Or are China and Zimbabwe's military protecting their own interests?